Hi class, Chapter 12, Social Problems, Remedying Social Problems. Sociologists are primarily interested in research and trying to understand problems from multiple perspectives. We make different assumptions about social problems in society. A social problem, again, has to do with anything that affects a significant number of people or a number of significant people. Significant number of people having to do with the scale of the problem. What segment of the population? Is it a significant segment of the population that's affected by a problem or issue? When it comes to affecting a number of significant people, it has little to do with the quantity or the number of people, but the importance of people. For example, we have only 100 senators. But if all 100 senators were threatened in some way, it would have a significant influence upon our population. If you might think that sanitation workers, there aren't very many in our population, but if sanitation workers as a whole were affected, it would have a significant influence upon our sanitation, our health, and safety in society. So we try to understand these problems. And we usually leave it up to the politicians and social workers and others to solve these problems. But sociology can inform that process. And the solving of social problems can be research based. Social problems are very complex. That's why we use many different perspectives to explain social problems. Social problems are outside of our awareness. Social problems are social issues. They're not private troubles. They're not things that just affect an individual, something within an individual's observation, something within an individual's ability to do something about, but they are social issues. They are so large, they are so complex that we are not able to observe them and to affect them individually. Social problems require collective action. It takes the cooperation of social institutions, organizations, advocacy groups. It takes the human population working together to address these major social problems. Social problems disrupt the order and structure of society. They can threaten all of us. A social problem can affect the entire social system. A change in one area can affect all other areas and can lead to the disintegration of social institutions, of families, of communities, and of society itself. One of the major institutions that has a direct influence upon social problems is the media. The media has the primary role of informing the public. The public has a right to know. However, there is a dilemma between balancing the public's right to know and the protection of rights to privacy. And sometimes these two come in conflict with each other, that a person's privacy is violated, a corporation or organization's privacy is violated in order to meet the demand of the public's right to know. And also, we have constitutionally protected rights, freedom of speech, and freedoms of the press. And so in our capitalist society, we have this commercial interest, we have these rights to privacy, all of these things, but at the same time, we have the role of the media to inform the public while at the same time ensuring the protections of their privacy. There are a number of perspectives when we look at the media in society. We have structural functionalism that looks at the media's role in maintaining the order of society. We have the conflict perspective, that the media could be a basis for conflict and could also inform us about the conflict that exists in society. And then symbolic interactionism, where the media has the ability to socially construct reality. There are many functions and dysfunctions of the media. The media has the role, on the one hand, from a functionalist, a structural functionalist perspective, to maintain the status quo within society. The media determines what we buy and what we buy into. advertisements, marketing is what we buy. What we buy into are political ideologies, our religious ideas, our philosophical ideas that emerge through the media. The media propagates conventional beliefs and values throughout our society. They are driven by white upper middle class values that are rooted in the Protestant ethic. And these values have a basis in history, have a basis in culture, have a basis in religion. The media can also be dysfunctional to society. It disrupts the status quo. The media has the ability to challenge the order of society, to encourage people to stand up for their rights. For example, civil rights and equal rights for women. The media can have a dysfunctional effect upon society that could be intended or could be unintended. And the media can both inform and misinform society. If society is assumed to maintain the order of society, the neglect of information and also misinformation can be used or could be used in order to control what the society knows about our institutions, about our government, and about the larger society. Media can also be examined as a source of conflict. It is assumed from the social conflict perspective that the media serves the interests of the ruling class within society, that the media is the basis for inequality, for exploitation, and for oppression in society. The media has the ability to create the dominant ideology within society, what we think about poverty, what we think about racial issues, gender issues, what we think about society as a whole. And so it is driven not to represent the various elements and populations within society and subpopulations in society, but is rather to support the interests of those who are in power, who control the means of production, who controls business and industry, who control even the media itself as a commercial enterprise. The media can also be looked at as a producer of reality. Media creates reality throughout our society. It doesn't matter if it's fiction or nonfiction, or if it's a dramatic performance or a documentary. The media is a very powerful institution. It creates meaning through the use of symbols and language. Think about logos, how you have all these different logos and you have different jingles that go along with commercials. You have public service announcements. You have good reality where you have things like public television that teaches kids, their alphabet and teaches them different principles within society, teach them how to read, teach them different languages. For example, there's good media. There are good sources of media and good reality that comes from television. But by and large, there are also pathologies that are represented within the large society. There is the sexual dysfunctions, there are violence, there is rape, there is murder, there are all kinds of things, profanity, the language, and all of these things that contribute to social pathologies within society. Also in advertisements, we advertise alcohol where we at the same time, we have alcohol problems and alcohol addiction and dependencies within society. We advertise drugs and we have a perpetuating drug problem in our society. So the media can create reality. It could be functional, it could be dysfunctional. The media has the ability to both construct reality, to deconstruct it, and reconstruct it. Things change all the time. Sometimes reality is retro. Look at fashions in the media, in the popular culture, how the media can go back into time and to reconstruct something. We often do that with history. We do that in our history. We go back and we reconstruct and we do what's called revisionist history. And The media has the ability to produce that. The media, whether real or perceived, fictional or nonfiction, a dramatic performance or a documentary, has real consequences for people and society. If you watch television, if you listen to the radio, if you read the newspaper, if you're on the internet, you are under the spell of the media. The media has a significant influence upon what we think and what we do in society. One of the ways to solve problems is that social change will need to take place in society. Solutions to social problems require social change. There are basically two types of social change. There's evolutionary change and there's revolutionary change. Each has its consequences. Evolutionary change is incremental, slow, and gradual. And it is considered a natural process. This is basically doing nothing but allowing society and social issues to correct themselves, or that the social problems themselves are part of a natural order of things within society, such as the ideas of people like Herbert Spencer, the survival of the fittest, and that the strong will conquer the weak, and then society will be better off with only those who are the strong that survive within society. On the other hand, there's what's known as revolutionary change. And revolutionary change is dramatic change within society. It is based upon conflict between classes of people, groups of people, and these people have the ability to organize themselves to change society, to change the order of society, to replace the existing power structure of society. Each of these have its advantages, and each of them have their limitations. Evolutionary change is very good because we can't always predict outcomes, but to allow things to naturally occur has its merits. One of the downsides of doing that is that we do nothing and we actually prolong the problem for an extended period of time. Revolutionary change has its merits. There's some things that need to change today and preferably right away or the day before if possible. But revolutionary change also can create more harm than good in the process. And again, not being able to predict the consequences and outcomes of that form of change. Another way in order to solve problems is through protest and activism. Social change is brought about by collective behavior. It's where crowds of people, groups of people, behaving toward a common goal, a common purpose, they're able to come together and change society. Collective behavior is usually spontaneous and disorganized, but it has the ability to transform an issue from a private trouble to a public issue, or something that is unobserved and unrecognized into the public consciousness. Then we have social movements. Social movements are like collective behavior. They are a special form of collective behavior, but they tend to be more purposeful, organized, and endure over time. Social movements have clear leadership, organizational structure. They also have very clear goals and a strategy or a means of achieving their goals around a particular issue or problem. Examples of social movements would be the civil rights movement. The organizations like NAACP or the National Urban League were able to come together and to influence legislation and civil rights laws in order to deal with the problems of race in society. We have the Equal Rights Amendment and the Equal Rights Movement, where women have been able to influence policies that would end discrimination based on sex. Another way of solving problems is through public policy. Politics is very powerful institution in our society. It has the purpose of making the major decisions within our society. Political institutions make decisions that affect all of us within society. There are conservative politics and there are liberal politics. When it comes to social problems and issues, conservative politics tends to support the interests of corporations and the elites of society. And so those interests ignore those of those who are members of the underclass and sort of the little people or small businesses. Liberal politics, on the other hand, supports the interests, of women, racial minorities, and the underclass within society. But they also ignore those interests of those who are the wealthy and corporate interests within society. Political parties such as Republicans and Democrats are an enigma when it comes to politics and society and addressing the problems that we face in society, because you can't always tell just because a person is Republican or Democratic what side of an issue they will be on, because you have people that can be fiscally liberal but socially conservative. You could have people that will be fiscally, when it comes to money and funding programs, conservative but socially liberal. And what do you get? It balances out. Nothing is done. You can provide the money fiscally and be liberal about it, but then be socially conservative. You don't support the issue at all. Or you can be fiscally conservative. I'm not going to pay for it, but I support the issue, and nothing gets done. So it's important to understand the complexity of dealing with things from a political standpoint, because there are always competing interests in that process. Finally, I want to talk about social problems and democracy. The American dilemma in our society surrounds this pursuit of capitalism and our democratic ideals. Capitalism can completely ignore fairness, can completely ignore fair competition. Our democratic ideals can regulate the way that businesses operate, the ethics involved, the preservation of competitiveness in markets. So this balance is a very difficult balance to strike between our capitalist enterprises and our ideals of democracy. The question is, what is the role of government when it comes to the most pressing social problems of our day? From a political standpoint, some would argue the government has no role. Others, a limited role. And others, they have a primary responsibility. In our Constitution, it says that there is a provision to promote the general welfare, the welfare of citizens of the United States when it comes to their health, when it comes to their safety, when it comes to their basic human needs for food, shelter, and clothing, and also a competitive capitalism where we have free and open markets, where we don't have monopolies over specific industries within our society. And then also that we have non-governmental interference and regulation. There is an important thing that some people believe that, like Adam Smith, believe that the government should be like an invisible hand and should not interfere in the pursuit of profits and in corporate interests in society. But at the same time, it's very important that we recognize our ideals as a democracy as we deal with the problems that we face from generation to generation in our society. If you have any questions about solving social problems, email me at dmonk@se.edu.